I'll give you one advice. Yes.
Jingalala hoo hoo.
If you ever say Negro to an African person, they will punch you in the face.
Acha, acha.
So
This
fast.
is not good. Negro is not good word.
Visiting other parts of the world for Africans or Black people always seems like taking your chances at a slot machine. In certain countries, racism and discrimination pose significant risks, making travel not just uncomfortable, but potentially dangerous.
Gun and shooting Lyoya once in the back of his head.
Get back!
From overt hostility to systemic discrimination, these destinations may force travelers to question their safety and dignity simply based on their skin color. Before booking your next flight, remember these are 7 countries that are not so welcoming for Black or African visitors. Let's begin with Switzerland. This country might not be the paradise you've imagined, especially if you're Black. Sure, Switzerland's got it all. Breathtaking scenery, mouth-watering cheeses, and watches so precise you might never be late again in your life. But beneath this postcard-perfect facade lurks a darker reality that's got the UN Human Rights Council raising eyebrows. Picture this. You're strolling through a quaint Swiss village, taking in the sights, when suddenly, bam! You're hit with a game of Who's Afraid of the Black Man? Yep, that's the name of a real kids game played in Switzerland. Sorry, I can't make this up. Switzerland might not have been a colonial power, but it turns out they were the sneaky accountants of the transatlantic slave trade. Talk about dirty money in those squeaky clean Swiss banks. Now you might be thinking, surely it can't be that bad? Well, buckle up, because the stats are uglier than a melted Toblerone. Reported cases of racial discrimination have skyrocketed by 30% in just 1 year. That's not a trend. That's a full-blown racism explosion. And if you thought finding an apartment in your hometown was tough, try doing it with a foreign-sounding name in Switzerland. Your chances of getting a viewing? Less than 5%. It's like playing housing roulette, but the house always wins. And by house, I mean white-sounding names. But at least the police are fair and unbiased, right? Wrong. If you're Black in Switzerland, you're more likely to be stopped, searched, and sadly, some of these encounters have ended in tragedy. What do you think? Is Switzerland a go or a no-go for you? Leave us a comment below. How about China? Is China a great country for Black travelers? I mean, there are millions of Chinese all across Africa, so they sure must be all about vibing with Black people, right? Well, not so fast. On the contrary, Chinese dislike for Black people is well documented, and it all came to the forefront during the height of the COVID-19 era when African immigrants were discriminated against and accused of carrying the virus. Yeah, I know, sounds ridiculous. The guts and irony of the entire situation are just laughable, but for many Blacks living in the country, it was one of the worst acts of racism in their lives. There is even a recorded situation of a man fearing for his life when he found out his neighbors were planning to eat him because he was Black. This is probably the worst joke in history, but that's nothing compared to this Chinese ad that shows an African being washed with detergent. Want to see exactly what happened? I recommend you watch this video. I'll link it somewhere in the description or comment section. Be sure to check it out. You don't want to miss it. There's more. How about this Chinese zoo displaying a chimp next to an innocent African kid? Sorry, you can't make this up, and this is just the tip of the iceberg. Black travelers in particular have expressed feeling like a spectacle when visiting major tourist destinations in China. Be ready for your hair being touched without permission and cameras pointed right at your face. As a Black traveler, you'd need an extra pair of tolerance and patience when around Chinese people who are not exposed to cultures outside of their own. Questions like, why are you Black? Or, are you Black because you never take a shower? Are just the softest comments on the chart of absurdity. If you insist on visiting, visit the bigger cities like Beijing and Shanghai, or even Guangzhou. Always stay away from smaller cities and towns. Our next stop, India. As a nation, India is obsessed with light skin. It is a sign of beauty, of being upper class. The Mughal emperors, who came from Persia, were fair-skinned. Our Brahmins and upper castes have lighter complexions. The British, the Gora Sahebs, were light-skinned. Dark-skinned people in India are usually from lower economic classes, as well as lower castes. You don't have to watch more than 2 Indian movies to notice this prejudice. Light-skinned actors are darkened to play certain roles, rather than casting naturally dark-skinned actors. And dark-skinned actors are often relegated to roles portraying villains, criminals, or lower-class characters. But if you insist on traveling to India as an African or Black person, remember these important rules. Keep to the tourist hotspots only. Never stay out late alone, because at night, antisocial elements take to the roads here. Don't agree to take a lift from random men. If you are asking someone for directions and they try taking you to a place where there aren't many people, just say thank you and move away.
I'll give you one advice.
Yes. Jingalala hoo hoo.
If you ever say Negro to an African person, they will punch you in the face.
Acha, acha.
So
This
fast.
is not good. Negro is not good word.
A lot of Indians are illiterate and utterly racist, so chances are you will hear a thing or two about your color. You'd have to forgive the ignorance and move on. Now, how about Spain? A country known for its vibrant culture and stunning landscapes is grappling with an uncomfortable truth: a pervasive undercurrent of racism. Despite its multicultural makeup, Spain has found itself on lists of countries where racial discrimination is alarmingly common. Imagine moving to a new country, full of hope and excitement, only to face discrimination at every turn. That's the reality for Abraham Jimenez Hinoa, a Cuban writer who made Spain his home in 2021. In a startling revelation, Hinoa has documented a whopping 182 incidents of racial discrimination since his arrival. From being tailed in stores to unwarranted ID checks on public transport, his experiences paint a disturbing picture of everyday life for people of color in Spain. You might think that the world of sports would be a safe haven from such prejudices, but sadly, that's not the case. In May 2023, during a match between Real Madrid and Valencia, the ugly face of racism reared its head once again. Vinicius Jr., a talented young player, found himself on the receiving end of horrific racial slurs from opposition fans.
Desculpa, é que eu só queria jogar futebol, só quero...
Can you imagine the pain of being called a monkey while simply doing your job? Now, the most troubling aspect of this situation is the apparent lack of action from those in power. Despite Spain's reputation for progress and inclusion, it seems that the pleas of marginalized communities have fallen on deaf ears. The question is, how can a country move forward when it refuses to acknowledge its shortcomings? If you're thinking of visiting or even staying in South Korea because, well, you love K-pop and kimchi, you might want to think that over again. First off, let's address the elephant in the room. South Korea is about as homogeneous as a carton of milk. We're talking 99% Korean, folks. That lack of diversity? Yep. South Korea is a recipe for some serious culture shock, and unfortunately, a heaping dose of prejudice.
South Korea deals with the same issues as Japan, like xenophobia, sexism, and toxic work culture, except it's worse. I think it's way worse. I've lived in both countries and can share my thoughts. In Seoul, I've been tripped by grown men for no reason, rejected from restaurants because I was with a white friend, rejected from clubs because I was with an Indian friend, and received worse attitude when I didn't dress up or wear makeup. As a woman, you're considered overweight if you weigh over 50 kilograms, and you're inferior if you don't have double eyelids and pale skin as an Asian. They hate foreigners, they hate other Asians, they even hate within their own people. Competition is so ingrained in Korean culture, people are probably competing to be the biggest hater. Some people are so unsatisfied with their lives that they genuinely hurt others to pull them down. There is zero consideration for other people. It's just a much more hostile environment compared to Japan, and customer service is much more polite here. I think both countries are worth visiting, but I would never live in South Korea again.
Now you might be thinking, but wait, don't Koreans love hip-hop and R&B? Sure they do. In fact, they've embraced Black culture with open arms. Well, sort of. It's more like they've cherry-picked the parts they like, leaving the actual Black people behind. It's cultural appropriation on steroids. Let's talk about the daily grind. Imagine walking down the street and having people stare at you like you're an alien who just landed from Mars. That's the reality for many Black folks in Korea. You might get people touching your hair without permission, because apparently personal space is optional. Or worse, crossing the street to avoid you. But wait, there's more. Job hunting as a Black person in Korea? It's like playing a game of Guess Who, where all the cards are stacked against you. Some Hegwons, private academies, straight up prefer white teachers, believing that's what real English speakers look like. Talk about a facepalm moment. And let's not even get started on dating. While some Koreans might be curious about dating a Black person, Others have families who'd sooner disown them than see them bring home someone with melanin. Now, I know what you're thinking. Surely there must be laws against this kind of discrimination, right? Well, South Korea doesn't have comprehensive anti-discrimination laws. In 2024, they're still debating whether it's okay to discriminate based on race, gender, or sexual orientation. But it's not all doom and gloom. Some younger Koreans are starting to wake up and have begun asking questions. They're questioning the old prejudices and pushing for change. And let's not forget about the Black expats, who are thriving despite the challenges, carving out their own spaces and communities. So, is South Korea the worst place for a Black person to travel or live? Not necessarily, but it's definitely got its fair share of hurdles. If you're thinking of making the move, just remember, pack your patience and an extra luggage of patience. Trust me, you're gonna need it. Would you love to visit South Korea someday? Let us know in the comments below. Now let's come back to the motherland, Morocco. Oh yeah, you think all African countries are very welcoming to Black people? Morocco is a land of enchanting medinas and aromatic tagines, harboring a troubling secret that's been swept under its ornate rugs for far too long. It's a tale of prejudice and discrimination that dates back centuries, rooted in the trans-Sahara slave trade. But here's the kicker. This isn't just ancient history. It's a present-day problem that's often swept under the rug. Imagine walking down the streets of Marrakech, soaking in the sights and sounds, only to hear racist slurs being casually tossed around. Shocking, right? Yet for Black Moroccans, this is an everyday reality. The language used to describe them is often so dehumanizing, it'll make your skin crawl. We're talking about people being compared to animals. Monkeys and pigs, no less.
They call us monkeys when we were all equals. We have the same red blood flowing in our veins. Even women spit when we walk by.
It's like stepping into a time warp where human dignity took a wrong turn. Now, picture this. You're born and raised in Morocco. Your family has been there for generations, yet you're constantly asked, where are you really from? That's the reality for many Black Moroccans. The phrase menente might sound innocent enough, but it's loaded with the implication that you don't belong. It's like being a permanent tourist in your own country. Talk about an identity crisis. But how do you solve a problem that nobody talks about? In Morocco's schools, the history of slavery, population diversity, and racism are conspicuously absent from the curriculum. It's like trying to complete a jigsaw puzzle with half the pieces missing. No wonder the cycle of ignorance keeps spinning. If you are a Black traveler who visits a country based on the population of Blacks in that particular country, you might be wondering, just how many Black Moroccans are there? Well, that's the million dirham question. The lack of official statistics means we're left guessing. But one thing's for sure, the trans-Sahara slave trade left an indelible mark on Morocco's demographic makeup. This Reddit user's experience as a Black Moroccan provides valuable insight. Morocco is a beautiful country, yes, but as a Black Moroccan, I've witnessed subtle forms of racism in my everyday life, whether on public transportation, at school, or in social settings. The difference here is that racism often occurs quietly, with people making comments behind your back or speaking in ways you might not fully understand. I come from a mixed background, with one Black Saharan and one white Amazigh parent, and I proudly embrace my identity. However, the racial biases I've faced throughout my life have truly tested my patience. Additionally, some incidents of disrespect toward tourists have become concerning. In Rabat, for example, I've seen instances where young locals acted inappropriately toward visitors. Fortunately, my friends and I intervened before the situation escalated. It's important to bring these issues to light so measures can be taken to improve the situation. I'm not alone in experiencing these challenges. Both Moroccans and foreigners face them. By acknowledging these problems, we can work toward change. Walking into the United States, a country often called the land of opportunity and freedom, might surprise some people with a harsh reality hidden beneath its bright surface. While many dream of the American dream as a clear path to success, the truth is that racism in the US is deep, widespread, and hard to ignore. This uncomfortable truth keeps coming up, showing a nation struggling with its own values. Take the heartbreaking unaliving of a Black man by a police officer in Minneapolis in 2020.
As he pleads for air.
This tragic event highlighted the deep racism within American institutions and sparked a bigger conversation about what Black immigrants face in the country. Most Black Americans are descendants of people brought to the U.S. as slaves, but there are also about 5 million Black immigrants who came looking for a better life. For many of them, the dream of America clashes with the harsh reality of ongoing racism. Think about Patrick Lyoya, a 26-year-old who left the Democratic Republic of Congo with his family 8 years ago to find safety and opportunities in the U.S. His story ended in tragedy when a police officer unalived him during a routine traffic stop in Grand Rapids, Michigan.
Gun and shooting Lyoya once in the back of his head.
Get back!
The whole incident was caught on camera, showing a scary struggle between Patrick and the officer. Even though the officer tried to use a taser, the situation ended with Patrick being shot in the head. Sadly, this isn't a one-time event, but part of a bigger problem: deep-rooted racism that affects every part of American life. Unlike most of the countries on this list, media houses and authorities have acknowledged there is indeed the issue of racism and are making conscious effort in addressing it. Which other countries need to make this list? Leave us a comment and please share with a friend. Peace.